Welcome to Houston Sports Talk with your host, Robert Land.
Thanks for checking into the best Houston sports podcast, part of the National Bleav Network, presented by our friends over at FanDuel. And you're about to hear from a former Astro who played with several players in the Astros Hall of Fame, along with 4 St. Louis Cardinals who are in Cooperstown, the MLB Hall of Fame. He was also a stand-in for an Oscar-winning actor in a baseball biopic, a film about an all-time baseball icon. You're also going to hear from an author of a baseball book who details the frustration of this Astro and hundreds more players after Major League Baseball dropped the ball on helping out its own. We'll explain that in a little bit. But before we get to our 2 guests, just a couple of thoughts on the current state of the Astros. And I know the focus for Astros Nation has been on this historic run of terrible offense and shutouts. But the bigger issue, for me anyway, is the pitching. If you watched our Astros trade deadline show and a couple other Astros shows in July, I emphasized my concern over the pitching staff. The bullpen, I already knew it was starting to struggle with this heavy workload because the starters weren't going deep into games. So you heard me point out the problem would continue with the injured pitchers coming back because they'd still be ramping up. And it's all come to fruition, unfortunately. I also expressed a concern a few weeks ago about Hader's heavy workload. Well, I hate being the I told you so guy. I don't want to be right about this, but we're seeing my worst fears playing out. And if I'm the Astros with Garcia and McCullers coming back, I'd piggyback a couple of these starters who can only handle 4 or 5 innings. That way, you hopefully save the bullpen for a day or two instead of going with like a 6-man rotation or putting one guy in the bullpen who works, 2 innings or something like that occasionally. I would just piggyback them, and hopefully those 2 guys could pull out maybe a full game between the 2. I also noticed on FanDuel that the Astros' odds to win the AL have dropped to 5th. 1 through 4 are the Tigers at 1, Blue Jays at 2, Yankees at 3, and Mariners at 4. Part of this is how much the Astros are struggling, even though they miraculously are still in first place in the West. Unbelievable. But the run differential has become alarming with all these blowouts. They're now 8th in the American League. They're even behind the Rangers and Rays, who are both under 500. So if you buy into the differential, it is kind of scary right now, but keep in mind, a jillion injuries, all the injuries that they've had, it all gets skewed because of that. If you have confidence in these veteran pitchers turning it around and you believe Hader can be back by the playoffs, it might be worth taking a shot on the Astros at 6-1 to win the AL, according to FanDuel. Go over to the website, check it out, because that's the number right now. They've got experience, the Astros do, in the playoffs, as we know, and if, say, classic Yordan Alvarez returns, if Hader returns, which would be a huge deal, they've got an offense that will suddenly look far better. They got a bullpen, we know, at the back end that looks fantastic. Jake Myers will be a huge help, too, if he can get back. It's easy to forget what Jake brought to this offense and the defense. Don't forget that before the injury. They don't call these the dog days of August for no reason. There's a ton of talent on the Astros who are either coming back from injuries, still rehabbing, or aren't playing up to their potential. Am I concerned about the bullpen? Absolutely. Am I disappointed Dana Brown wasn't able to add a pitcher, especially a reliever? Without question. But think about putting a few dollars. Again, it's the dog days, so we got to factor that in as well, on the Astros to win the American League. This feels more like one of those stocks that's a good buy while it's low. Also, guys, look for our live Texans postgame this weekend. Keep an eye out for the notifications because I may have this one on Sunday since we may already have a few roster moves by Sunday. There might even be 2 live Texans shows this weekend. So keep that in mind. But the easy thing is just, get it in your notifications. Of course, subscribe if you haven't already. Would love to get our subs up into a few more thousand by the end of the year. Quick reminder before we roll on with this interview, do you still believe in the Astros? Are you frustrated with anybody in this lineup and the pitching staff in particular? Are you frustrated with Dana Brown right now? Tell me what you think in the YouTube comments. Also, look for our YouTube shorts. if you need a quick break at work. And make sure you're subscribed on YouTube, like I said, to get those notifications so you can get updates on all of our content. Even if you watch on YouTube regularly, make sure to subscribe to us on your favorite podcast app. So if you don't have time to watch, you can always listen while you're shopping, exercising, driving to work, or working in the yard or in the house, whatever you're doing. It's a great way to, listen to us and, keep doing all the things that I know you guys are busy doing. Got a couple more thoughts after this interview, so stick around when it's over. Joining me is an Astros pitcher in the late 60s and early 70s who played with Astros legends Jimmy Wynn, J.R. Richard, Bob Watson, Larry Dierker, Joe Morgan, Don Wilson, and Cesar Cedeno. What an incredible group. He was traded to the Cardinals in 72, where he played with MLB Hall of Famers Bob Gibson, Lou Brock, Orlando Cepeda, and Joe Torre, along with future Astro great Jose Cruz. He's been a body double for Lou Gossett Jr. in a movie about Satchel Paige, and coached and scouted in the Padres organization and also coached in the Astros organization. He's currently the coach of the UH Downtown Baseball Club. We welcome in Scipio Spinks. Great to have you, Scipio. Thanks for doing this.
Hey, I appreciate it, Robert. Thanks for having me on.
In your 3 seasons with the Astros, you bounced back and forth between Houston and their minor league affiliate, Oklahoma City, but that rotation included, with the Astros at that time, Don Wilson and Larry Dierker. Did you get a chance to know Dierker and Wilson? What do you remember about those guys?
I got a chance to know them very, very well. Both are fierce competitors, top pitchers, young top pitchers in the National League. They taught me a lot. I learned a lot from them and being around them.
What kind of things did they teach you? Do you remember much about what they were showing you to how to be a major league pitcher?
Don Wilson actually taught me how to throw the slider, which became my signature pitch along with my fastball. And Dierker was just watching him the way he went about his business. I mean, every time he goes on the mound, it's a complete game pretty much. He did a lot by example, and Don was more so hands-on with me.
Now, you also, in 1971, you were around when J.R. Richard had his rookie year with the Astros, but you also spent some time in Oklahoma City with him, I Bleav. Did you spend a lot of time just being around JR and talking with him? What do you remember about little baby young JR, the guy that we would end up seeing become this legend?
Jay was a freak of nature. I mean, I've never seen anybody that tall, hands as long as a baseball glove. When he puts his finger around the baseball, his fingers around it, you don't even see the baseball. He was just scary. And to his defense, he was a gentle giant. JR wouldn't hurt a soul, but he gave you that. He was intimidating. Just to add a little bit about, I just got back from Oklahoma City by being put in the 89ers AAA Hall of Fame. They just honored me over the weekend.
That's great. I mean, that had to be something special to have that happen all these years later. I mean, it's been how many years since you played with them? 56 years, 57 years?
56, 57 years, yes, sir.
Now, do I have this story right? Sports Illustrated wrote that after you got called up, you stole the headdress from the Braves mascot in your first year in the majors. Is that the true story?
Let's just say I didn't steal it. I ran him down and I snatched the headdress off of his head. That was Chief Nakahoma. And he turned around and said to me, "You're the first person who ever did that." That's a true story. That's a true story.
Now, I'm wondering, because there was a guy I heard growing up all the time. I'm too young to remember this guy, but he was one of the great characters in all of Astros history, Doug Rader. Was he at all influential? Was the Red Rooster involved in this in any way?
Well, he was on the team. What had happened, Spec Richardson came in and said, "I want somebody to get that bleeping Indian." And I raised my hand. I said, "I'll get him." So what the team said, "You get him, we'll give you $500. We'll collect $500 and give it to you." Spec said, "If you get him, I'll match it." So I said to myself, $1,000, I don't even make that in a month. Heck, I told that, I ran the Indian down and got the headdress and the money.
That was great money, obviously, back then. What a story. Another guy that we mentioned off the top, Cesar Cedeno. Did you get to see much of him? Because he was 19 and 20 in his first two seasons in Houston. That was 70 and 71. So that was
Correct.
the period of time where you were coming back and forth with the Astros.
Cedeño came through so fast to AAA ball. The only way you were going to see Cedeño, you had to go to Houston and play on the same team. He was amazing. He put a month together there in Oklahoma City like I've never seen. And the next time you saw him, he was in the big leagues and never came back.
Now, we heard comparisons. I talked to Enos Cabell, and, he mentioned this too. There were comparisons with Cesar and Willie Mays, talent-wise. I mean, how great a talent was Cesar Cedeno when you got a chance to see him?
Willie Mays. He was Willie Mays. He was Bo Jackson. He was everything. He was just unbelievable ball player. Even when he got hurt, he was above average ball player.
Now, I mentioned also guys like Jimmy Wynn, Bob Watson, and Joe Morgan off the top of the show. Tons of young talent at that time. What do you remember about those guys?
One thing, Jimmy Wynn and Joe Morgan taught me not to gamble. When I first year in minor leagues, they were playing a game called Pluck. And it was just Jimmy and Joe in the room in spring training. And I was walking by and I looked in. They said, "Hey, you want to play?" I said, "Yeah." Well, after my mama gave me $50, they took 40 of it. And they said, "Next time you play with the big leaguers, big guy, bring big league money." They did give me my money back to me. So I learned never to gamble.
That's incredible. Joe Morgan, I mean, he sort of was already an all-star. I mean, he's very good at that point, but he just took another leap. Did that surprise you that he had that leap that he could make when he was in Cincinnati, or was the Astrodome holding him back at that time?
Yeah, the big dimensions held Joe back, but not that much. Joe you're talking about a student of the game. He took notes on everything. He had a book on every pitcher. He knew what he did. I used to see him exercise his eyes before the game. Had an eye chart that he would exercise his eyes with. He did everything he was supposed to do, along with his exceptional ability. It was just waiting to come out.
Was there anybody in particular, maybe somebody I didn't mention, that really had an influence to you when you were trying to learn how to pitch for the Astros and being up at the big league club? I mean, who were the people that you really connected with when you got brought up?
To be honest, no one. I'm a young kid coming out of Oklahoma City and had good stats. And a couple of the older guys, they were hanging on. The younger guys, they were keeping to themselves. Remember, because we only had 4-man rotation. So the other 4, the guys that were in the rotation, they kept to themselves. So I had to learn on the fly. But Don Wilson was more hands-on and took care of me a lot better than anybody else.
What kind of person was Don? Because we lost him too soon. So all we know about him is a little bit about his pitching, but we don't know a whole lot about Don Wilson, the person, outside of a couple of the people that really got a chance to be around him.
How do you spell mean? M-E-A-N? And you can put Don Wilson's name in between that mean or whatever. He was a no-holds-barred baseball player. If he liked you, you were in his circle. He was on the scale of Bob Gibson, not quite Bob Gibson, but when you got into his inner circle, you were good with him. But if you weren't on his inner circle, whoa, watch out. That was just him. Be careful. On and off the field.
Yeah. Is there any particular stories that you think of with your time with the Astros? I mean, what are your big memories? I mean, you didn't get to pitch a ton those 3 years, but right. I mean, just being in the Astrodome, being around some of those guys, and like I said, that's a pretty impressive group of guys that you were around, even though they weren't winning at that time. My
best impression that I felt was when I won my first major league game against Atlanta. It was a complete game. You know, I pitched against Hank Aaron, and Orlando Cepeda, and Rico Cardi, Ralph Garr, all those guys. And that was the best thing that happened to me at that time.
So after the Astros, you get traded to the Cardinals in 72. And in June that season, you trailed only Tom Seaver and Steve Carlton in strikeouts by that point. But then disaster strikes after you had singled. Now I'm going to point out that you were so fast that manager Red Shaney's regularly used you as a pinch runner. So this was not unusual for you to be on the base pass. Tell us what happened at that moment after you have a Luis Melendez double, if I've got this right. What happened that sort of alters your career?
Lou Brock was a hitter in front of Luis Melendez, and I blame Brock for my injury. He hit a long fly ball to right field that didn't go out of the ballpark, and it was caught at the wall. I said, Lou, you hit a home run. I don't get hurt. But Melendez, it was I don't know what the count was, but it was a running situation. Like you said, Red always left me up to run on my own. And so just so happened, when the pitcher, I think it was Ross Grimsley, threw the fastball, Melendez, I was off on the pitch. And Melendez, I could see in front of me, the ball was hit the left center field. So when I got to second base, I said, I'm going to score. I'm just going to put it in my mind. As I got to third base, the third base coach, Vern Benson, was holding up his hand, but I'd already been heading towards home plate, and I just kept right on going. We were always told, when in doubt, you don't know where the ball is, slide. So I slid. I came across home plate. I saw the umpire say safe, and as I was coming up from my slide, bench came down with his shin guard and clipped me at the plate.
What happened to you physically at that point? What about that screwed your career up?
What happened? I ran to the dugout. I tried to get back up. I fell to my face. They wrapped it up, and I had a posterior cruciate ligament tear.
Were you just not the same after that? What happened?
You know, back in them days, they were using screws, hammers, and nails to put you back together. They put me in a cast for 6 months. I went to spring training, and it was just, I felt good, but in the back of my mind, it said, don't put any pressure on your right leg. That's the leg that got hurt. Don't put any pressure on it. I started throwing. I was throwing nothing but arm. I know I must have started 6, 7 games. After about 3 or 4 innings, my arm would just start aching, and I couldn't. I tried to get through it. I got through some of the innings, but it snapped tricep muscle in my right arm.
And it never was the same. Probably modern medicine would have fixed you right.
Exactly. That's what doctors have told me. Modern medicine would have fixed it. I just tried to keep pitching, and it just didn't got to the point where I just couldn't pick up the ball again. It just hurt, and I bounced from team to team to team.
That year with the Cardinals, then you had the second year with the Cardinals, and then after that, you kind of bounced around in the minor leagues. But while you were still in the majors, you had a ton of fun, because I've seen the stories about this. You pretended to be Lou Brock in spring training by wearing his jersey. Is that right?
True. That's exactly right. They said, Brock said, I dare you. So I put his jersey on and walked out there, and everybody, Mr. Brock, can I get your autograph? I said, I'm not Lou Brock. I said, I'm not Lou Brock. So I went back in and took the jersey off.
What was it like to play with Lou? What was he like to be around?
There was 2 opposite polars right there. Lou Brock, the teammate, the passionate guy. Bob Gibson, don't like hitters, don't like nobody. And so when Bob told me, when I got there, you do not hang around with hitters. You do not talk to hitters. And Lou Brock knew this. And Lou Brock would come up to me when I'm with Bob and go, they always called me Spinks. They never called me by my first name. They'd say, Spinks, you ready to go out? Let's go. I said, nah, Lou, I'm not going to go. I said, come on, let's go. He said, you afraid of Bob Gibson? I said, yes, sir. So I just left, and he would just laugh and laugh and laugh. That was crazy.
Boy, that's got to be fun. I mean, Gibson, I can imagine he was pretty hardcore, but did he give advice to young pitchers? Would he talk to you at all?
I got a story to tell about that, but just to make it short, I've been there 3 weeks. He's never said a word to me. I go to Montreal. I pitch a complete game won the game, got a hit or so, and the reporters came up to me and said, "You're the next Bob Gibson." I said, "No, sir." I said, "When I've done what that gentleman has done over there, and it's for many years that I said, then you could compare me." I said, "My name is Scipio Spinks, and I'm happy to be here." They leave, and I look out the corner of my eye. Now, remember, Bob Gibson ain't said a word to me. He didn't even say, "Welcome to the club." And when I got over, I looked up, and he was standing over me. And he said, I got my head down. I never looked up at him. He said, "I heard what you said." He said, "Every black pitcher that comes up here that throws hard, they want to be like me. It's about time someone be themselves." He said, "Let's go eat dinner." And I never looked up at him. I said, "Mr. Gibson, I can't eat dinner with you guys." In his words, he said, "I didn't say pay for it." And from that day, for the next 2 years, he took me under his wing. And it was because I was humble enough not to run. Of course, I had my fun and I stayed off to myself, but I never tried to compete against Bob Gibson or be like Bob Gibson. I just wanted to do what I was supposed to do.
It had to be something. You get to play with guys like Gibson and Brock. I mean, that's got to be something as a kid that you grew up in Chicago, right?
Yes, I did. Yes, sir. And I was a Cubs fan, which didn't go well with the Cardinal people.
Yeah, that's what I was thinking. I mean, I went to college in Missouri, and my mom grew up a Cardinals fan, so I know about the rivalry for sure.
Yes.
And
yes.
And not only did you play with those two guys, but do you remember much about playing with a young 24-year-old Jose Cruz when he was with the Cardinals?
Jose Cruz we played against each other all through the minor league system coming up. We were pretty much in the same league. Our teams were in the same league. And I faced Cheo a lot. They used to platoon him. That's why Melendez was playing that day, because a left-handed pitcher was pitching. So they platooned Melendez and Cruz. Cruz just was a very, very good baseball player, consistent, kept to himself, never fooled around a lot, was real quiet, but a hell of a baseball player.
And then also you played with Joe Torre. Joe Torre, when you got there, he was coming off an MVP season, and then you get to St. Louis. Were there signs that this guy was going to be also a great manager down the road too?
Torre had managerial traits in him. He was an older guy. This is how it went. Bob Gibson handled the pitching staff. Joe Torre handled the position players. That's pretty much, and Red just sat there and let him go and let him take care of it.
It was a veteran team. They had
yes.
A lot of those guys had played in World Series, correct?
Correct. Rick Wise was there, pitching on the staff. There was a bunch of guys that came. What they called him, Trader Bing. Being Divine. There was a lot of guys came through there.
You had a lot of fun when you were in the major leagues. And one of the best stories that I've heard is about this guy I'm about to show up on the screen. This guy, if the people are listening on audio, this was one of your best friends, a stuffed animal. I would beg you guys to go to YouTube and look at this photo. But tell us the story behind this.
Mighty Joe. That was my best friend. We were in Houston, coming out of Houston, going home back to St. Louis. And I was on the way, there was a toy shop, and I saw this stuffed animal in there, and I went and I purchased the stuffed animal, and we couldn't go back to the hotel because we've already checked out. So I took it into the clubhouse. Bob Gibson walked over to it. He said, "I don't like the nose on it." And he took his fingers and he popped the nose off. I go, "Oh, that looks pretty good." He said, "What's his name?" He said, "What's this animal's name?" And I looked around the clubhouse because I haven't named it. I said, "Mighty Joe Lou." And Lou Brock looked at me. I said, "Mighty Joe, Mighty Joe." And so we just named him Mighty Joe. I took him everywhere I went. I took him on the flights. I took him into the hotel. I kept him in the ballpark where he sat in the clubhouse with a Cardinals jersey on, as you see, and a Cardinals cap.
After you left the Cardinals, I understand you passed him along too. Is that right?
I shipped him to Bernie Carbo in Boston. and Bernie took him around the American League.
Did that go over much better in Boston, or go over a lot worse in Boston than it went in St. Louis?
I think it went a lot worse in Boston than it did in St. Louis. But Bernie didn't care.
What a fun clubhouse that had to be. Just to be with those guys, and what a few years that you had, even though you only got a chance to play it. I mean, how do you think of your major league career? Do you feel like, it was a lost opportunity, or I'm just glad I was able to get to do all that stuff?
Kind of a mixed feeling. I was devastated that I got hurt and couldn't finish what I wanted to do. What I wanted to do was spend some years in the big league and play. But at the same time, I figured the man upstairs had something else better for me to do. I stayed in Major League Baseball. I did a few years scouting in colleges during the off season, but I had hands on a few young ball players that made it to the big leagues. I was able to help a bunch of kids as I lived here in Houston by just mentoring a bunch of guys. My team at University of Houston downtown. This gives me an opportunity to help people.
That's fantastic. And there's even more to your life story, because in '81, Lou Gossett Jr. stars as Satchel Paige in a TV movie called Don't Look Back. Satchel was still alive at that time, and you were extra on that, or you were the stand-in, I should say, for Lou Gossett Jr. as Satchel Paige. So you got to be, a little help out on that particular film. Did you get a chance to meet Satchel at the time, since he was still alive?
Satchel was the technical advisor on that movie, and he was there for about 2 weeks. My wife and I would sit in his room at night, and she'd play checkers with him. And while she was playing checkers with him, he was telling me story about, oh my God, And I said, so Satch, what about this? How much of this picture is true? He said, Satch can't tell him everything. I said, but it was true. I got to meet him. I got to thank him for what he did in professional baseball as an elderly black man to come and pitch in the big league. And after he threw who knows how many hundreds and thousands of innings before then, he still wouldn't tell his age. I tried to get him to say it, but he wouldn't. He kept it to himself.
Did you get to throw some baseballs back and forth with him at all?
Oh, yeah. We played catch. That was like I was playing with my dad as a 3-year-old or 4-year-old. That's how it felt to me. And I made sure that I didn't throw the ball hard back. I did. I mean, he was kind of getting it up a little bit as hard as he could throw at whatever age he was. But he had a little zip in it, not a whole lot, but it wasn't no hump in it.
Wow, what a story. And it wasn't just Lou Gossett in that movie. There were also legends like Cleavon Little, Ossie Davis, Jim Davis, better known as J.R. Ewing's dad in Dallas.
Yes.
He was huge back at that time. Did you get to interact with any of them?
Oh, yes. Oh, yeah. We would always sit around at the bar after shooting that night at the hotel. I was brought up as a young player. When you're around veterans, you learn how to shut up and listen. I just shut up and I just took everything in. It was marvelous. It was unbelievable.
Everybody treated you well on the set. That was just a great experience.
Oh, everybody treated me very well. What was the guy who did Patton? George Scott. He was the first director. George C. Scott. He would tell me, he'd come over to me and say, "You made my day shot look good." What I did all the pitching in the movie at Satchel Paige, but they panned so far back you couldn't tell it was me. You could just see me going through the gyrations that they did to throw the ball. And of course, as it got closer, and Lou Gossett was there, but I did all the pitching and all the athletic baseball stunts.
How closely did you look like Lou Gossett at that time? Did you look at all like him?
Not at all, just tall. We were the same height, 6'3", 6'4", They had to put, that's not funny, but they had to put dark makeup on me so they could tell, kind of have an idea it was Lou Gossett throwing the ball.
Yeah, he's maybe a little darker complected than you were back
darker complexion. Yes.
Well, there's also more to your story, and for that, I'm going to bring somebody in. So since your retirement, one thing that has happened is not good, and that's when I bring in author Doug Gladstone. Great to have you, and you wrote this book called The Bitter Cup of Coffee, How MLB and the Players Association Threw 874 Retirees a Curve. Can you explain what you learned about Scipio and the struggle of these retired players?
Certainly. First of all, I last saw Scipio back in May with his beautiful bride, Jeanette. And Scipio, I'm a little disappointed, my friend. I thought you told me I was your best friend, not Mighty Joe. In any event. So,
You're still alive.
Yeah. So back in 1980, there was a strike, and it was averted. You were talking about Satchel Paige. Well, the vesting requirement in 1969 to get a pension was 5 years, and it was lowered specifically to 4 years to accommodate Satchel Paige. So it stays that way for 11 years until 1980. And like I said, there was this strike where the hot button issue of the time was lowering the amount of players that were going to be protected on a major league roster because of free agency. When you lose someone to free agency, you have to protect a bunch of players. The union wanted to protect 40, the league wanted to protect 30, and that was essentially what they were going to war about. So the strike was averted just before Memorial Day weekend when the late Ray Grebe, who I Bleav was the FAA rather, administrator for the Reagan administration, he goes to the late Marvin Miller, the players union head, and he says, you call off this strike and we're going to make your rank and file. We're going to give them an offer you just can't refuse. What that offer was, and it's been that way for the past 45 years, the 4 years that you needed to vest for a pension was lowered to just 43 days of service credit on an MLB roster. Now, let me put that in perspective for you. You got a great young player named Cam Smith for the Houston Astros. He made the roster out of spring training. Right now, Cam Smith, on or around May the 15th, he qualified for a pension. But Scipio Spinks, who has way more service time on an active MLB roster, does not get a pension. So I found out about this blight on the national pastime, and I started writing this book, and it became my passion project. As a result of my book, MLB former Commissioner Bud Selig met with the late Michael Weiner, who was the executive director of the Players Union at the time, and they offered these guys for every 43 game days that a man like Scipio or David Clyde of Humble, they were getting, $625 for every 43 game days on a roster, up to $10,000 a year, a one-time payment. Now, look, I'll be the first one to admit, a lot of these guys who I spoke to for the book, they were just happy they were getting anything after 32 years. But when you think about it, this is not a pension. When Scipio goes to that great baseball diamond in the sky, that bone that he's being thrown, and that's what I call it, a bone, it's not being passed on to Jeanette or his daughter from his first marriage. I think that's kind of criminal. It just bespeaks volumes, in my opinion, of where this union's head is at. In 2022, the union increased that bone by 15%. So now each man gets the princely sum of $718.75 for every 43 game days on the roster. But I want you to think about this. I want you and your viewers and your listeners to just mull this over. The minimum salary for the 26th man on the bench this year is $760,000. Right now, a vested pension is worth $275,000 if you are vested in the pension plan. Listen, legally, these men like Scipio, men like David Clyde, Joe Gilbert of Jasper, Texas, all these men, I mean, legally, they don't have a leg to stand on, but morally, are you kidding me? with the amount of money that this game brings in, with the amount of money that this game generates, the only thing they can do is throw these non-vested men monies up to $11,500. And by the way, that's before taxes. I've never asked Scipio what he gets, but I'm guessing it's about $5,000 if he's fortunate. $5,000 compared to $275,000. It's just not right. But for crying out loud, these men went to bat, for today's group of ball players, and all you can do is throw them this bone.
1972, I was one of the guys that walked out of me to go on strike. And the strike was mostly for better pension, better insurance, better contracts, multi-year contracts, for that all these guys are getting right now. If we had said no and did not strike and cross the line, maybe they'd have got the money back somewhere down the line. But we started that ball rolling. And for them to turn their back on us, it's a shame. It's a slap in the face. I go to Steve Rogers and Tony Clark and I go, we're not multiplying. We're dying out. And you got to do something for us. The answer I got is, we got it on the table. Yeah, right. It's been there for 25 years, however. That's all I got to say.
Hey, Doug, is it any better in the other sports? I know the NFL guys have always had to fight this battle too. It seems like, owners are going to be owners. Rich people are going to be rich people. They don't want to give you another nickel than you can get,
John Riggins, who has been saddled with some, I believe, dementia issues. His wife, Lisa Riggins, is an attorney, and she established a group called FAIR. I don't know what the acronym is. David Stern, when he was commissioner of the NBA, he went to bat for those pre-1960 ball players who didn't have monies given to them. So it is much better in other industries. But Mike Ditka, before he passed, Lem Barney, the cornerback for the Detroit Lions, they were huge when it came to fighting for equity and fairness for pro football players. We don't have anyone like that. The only people that Tony Clark takes care of is Tony Clark.
Yeah. I know it's frustrating. Hopefully some of this stuff can get rectified. I want to try to end on some fun with Scipio. And first of all, tell everybody what you're doing right now, because you're coaching the University of Houston Downtown Ball Club. Is that right?
Yes, sir. I'm in my 6th year with them. Actually, I was coming home after I left the Arizona Diamondbacks, and I was going to retire. But one of my kids that I used to do lessons with was going to school at UHD playing on their club baseball team. And he called me, he said, "Hey, Sip, we need a manager. We need a head coach. You want to be it?" I said, "Well, fill out the resume for me." Well, he did, and I got the job. For the last 6 years, we've been in the playoffs, and the last 2 years, we've been back-to-back to the club, Division II Club Baseball World Series.
Yeah, that's great. I also wanted to ask you, like I said, I want to end on something fun. In 2004 and 2005, the Astros and the Cardinals were playing some big games in the playoffs at that time. Who was Scipio Spinks rooting for when the Astros and the Cards were playing in the playoffs against each other?
I would say more so for the Cardinals, because they gave me the opportunity to be a full-time starting pitcher. When I came up and down with the Astros, just to tell it like it was, if Don Wilson never got hurt, they'd have never called me up, or they'd have never called JR up. We had to wait for Don Wilson to get hurt for one of us to get called up. I wasn't in the regular rotation, to say, and I was too wild to be a reliever. So there's no way that was going to happen. So I would say more St. Louis Cardinals. I say this about the two teams. The Astros taught me how to play baseball. The Cardinals taught me how to win.
Well, for most of the last century, they've just been a winning franchise, kind of struggling a little bit the last few years, but overall, just one of the great franchises. One last thing.
Yep.
What guy scared you the most, or what guy were you most excited to pitch against when you were pitching in the major leagues?
I never watched a hitter walk up to the plate. But to go back before you say that, I used to tell everybody, used to come, who's the guy that scared you the most? Who's the guy you? I said the National League. That's who scared me the most. Those guys were just nasty. But the main one, I faced Aaron and Rose and Bench and Stargell and them. Al Oliver. Al Oliver was the guy. They said Stargell hits him over the wall. Oliver hits him through the wall. He was just one hard hitter to get out all the time.
Was there a strikeout that you were just so happy about because it was against one of those guys like an Aaron or Hall of Fame guy?
I struck out Rose once or twice and Bench once or twice. But Willie Stargell was the main one. I really loved it because one time, you know how Willie used to do the windmill in his bat before he got ready set to hit the ball? I was timing him, and I was trying to throw the ball right when he was going to go, and he stopped. And I stopped, and I said, okay, Will, go do your thing, and I'll just wait on you. But Stargell.
Wow, that's some great stories, and I can't tell you how much I appreciate you coming on and hanging out with us for a little bit. And Doug, you telling the story about what these guys deserve. And like I said, I hope things change. But really love talking to both of you. And thanks again, Doug, for putting this whole thing together.
You're very welcome. Thank you, Robert.
Thank you, Robert. I appreciate it.
Great stuff from Scipio Spinks. Do any of you remember watching him play back in the day with the Astros? Tell me your story in the comments. Did you enjoy this show? Do you like when I have the old ball players on? Let me know, because I love talking to them. It's always fun and fantastic stories. So what do you think? By the way, did you see that the Texans are 2.5-point underdogs against the Rams on the road in week 1, according to our friends over at FanDuel? Yeah, a couple of things to keep in mind if you want to take the Texans in this one, because, it's the first game of the season. They'll be well rested, so that's good. When you're looking at a game like the first one of the season, weird things can happen. So Rams, the favorite at home. I get it. But Matthew Stafford, we know about the back injury, finally returned to practice. He's been managing this back injury the last few weeks. Even if he's healthy, he could be taking some shots from Will Anderson and Danielle Hunter. We're seeing what this defense can do in the preseason. They're no joke. They might know a little bit about the Rams offense also, considering Nick Caley was coaching the Rams offense last year. So maybe some inside information, or at least have a little bit better of an idea of what to expect with Nick Caley here. Throw that into your thought process when you're looking to put down a few dollars on FanDuel. Go to FanDuel.com, of course, to check it out. Also, a little concerned about Joe Mixon maybe being ready for week 1, but considering how good the O-line has run block in the preseason, I'm not as concerned as I probably would have been a few weeks ago. So, again, if you're thinking about it, check it out. Go to FanDuel. Thanks to our friends over at FanDuel who help us and support us with the show. And we'll talk more Texans this weekend.
You're listening to Houston Sports Talk.
Hey, don't forget to support us by subscribing and commenting on YouTube. You can always listen to us on Spotify, Apple, or your favorite podcast app. Tell your friends about us and share our show links on social media. Spread the word, everybody. Thanks for listening.